Hi there, boys and girls. It's me again, and maybe mums and dads if you're listening too. I hope you do. It's Rona Barbour here, your storyteller, and I want to tell you a story about a little bird and why sometimes things are not always what they seem to be. One day, the young boy was playing in the woods, as he often did when he was a child. He was an only child and he lived alone, and wasn't any other children near enough to make friends with that he could play with daily or on a regular basis. So he tended to just amuse himself. And he came across a little bird who was injured, lying on the floor. And at first he thought the bird was dead, and he thought, oh dear, I should really bury this little creature. But when he got closer, he could see that it was still alive. And he took it home. And with the help of his mother, they nursed it back to health. And when his father went to the marketplace the following week, he brought back a bird cage. And the bird still wasn't able to fly. So they put it in the cage. And the little boy had his own bedroom. So he wanted to keep it in his room. And his father carried it upstairs, and it was on a stand, and he put it by the window. And the little bird lived there. And it spent quite a lot of its time looking out of the window, as you would, as we ourselves would do. Sat near a window, we'd obviously be tempted to keep looking out and see what was going on. And he saw this world out there that he was much more used to, where other birds were flying about in the sky. And he was here in this cage, trapped. But he liked the young man who had saved his life, and he enjoyed spending time with him. And when the young man came into his bedroom to play, he would open the cage and put his hand out, and the little bird would jump onto his hand. And then he would take it over and sit it on the desk if he was doing his homework or something, and the little bird would chirp away and chatter away to him. It was actually a thrush, which is not a very beautiful bird as such. It's not colourful or anything, but it does have a lovely singing voice. And the little boy loved to hear this little thrush sing. But after a while, it stopped singing. And he would jump on his hand, sure, as soon as he put his hand into the open cage. And he would come and sit on the desk. But he would just sit there. And occasionally he would give a little chirping sound. But he didn't sing. And one day, the boy, religiously cleaning the cage out every week, was in the middle of doing so. And when he'd finished, he didn't close the door properly on the cage, the little latch. It was loose. And when he left his bedroom, he didn't close the door. And the bird, as soon as the boy left for school, realised that the latch was loose, and he just tapped the little door with his beak, and it opened. And he flew out and flew over to the desk, the place he was most familiar with in that room. But when he saw that the door was opened, he was so tempted to go and explore. Was there anybody else at home? So he flew out of that door and down to the kitchen, and the kitchen window was opened. Oh my, here it was. Here was his chance to escape. He hadn't felt trapped as such. He just felt that he was somewhere that he didn't really belong. He belonged out there with the other birds in the woods. That's what he had been used to. But he'd been with the boy for a couple of years now. He couldn't make up his mind what to do. He hesitated, sat on the window ledge, actually sat on the spar on top of the first window where it was opened. He sat where the opening was and looked out and saw all these birds flying around. And then he noticed that some of the birds that were flying around were the predatory type that would often chase after little thrushes like him. And that was what had been responsible for him being injured in the first place. Did he really want to go back to that? That was quite a dangerous life. He could enjoy life as it was with his friend here in the safety of this home where he had been looked after, nursed back to health and looked after. He had a friend here, and he knew instinctively that that little boy would be heartbroken if he flew away, if he left him. So he flew back upstairs, spent a little while looking around in the bedroom at things they had never noticed before, flew up onto the top of the wardrobe, and then eventually, when the little boy came home from school, he was back in his cage. But the door was still open because he couldn't close it. It was easy enough to nudge it open with his beak, but to close it was a different thing altogether because it had fastened onto its little clasp. When the boy came in and saw that the gate of the cage was opened, he was astonished because he knew the bedroom door was open and he knew the kitchen window was opened, and he couldn't believe that the bird hadn't flown away. And he said to the little bird, "Have you decided to stay? You could have left." And the bird understood everything he was saying. And as an answer, he started to sing. And so he does to this very day. He sits in his cage in that bedroom. Sometimes he comes out. The boy opens the cage now and lets him out. And he'll fly around the room and he'll fly around the kitchen until his mum shoos it away. If she's cooking or whatever, or his dad reading his newspaper, he'll sit on his head and he'll shoo him away. But he's so happy to be there, somewhere where he's loved and looked after. And so it is to this day. They both lived happily ever after, boy and bird. Thank you.